pointed to Michael Jordan as an example of what everybody wants to be, the fulfillment of the American dream. He has everything he wants. He could go anywhere he wanted. He could buy anything that he wanted. Michael Jordan is the epitome of the American dream. And yet I was struck by another episode that showed Michael Jordan holed up inside his hotel room, lying there on a couch. He couldn't go outside because if he did, the people would swarm him. He had nothing, no freedom to himself. And as the camera zoomed in on Michael Jordan, he looked up at the camera and he said, "I wouldn't wish this kind of life on anyone." Indeed, it has been suggested that in many ways, the poor and the suffering, the meek and the mild, have advantages over the rest of us. They can accept God more quickly, more easily, because their dependence on Him is greater many times than ours. People in pain, people who are afraid, people who are in need are just more likely to recognize that they really need help and to turn to someone more easily to ask for that help. And so when you view the Beatitudes from that perspective, they become not patronizing slogans, but real words to live by, real insights, genuine insights into meaningful life. Through the Beatitudes, Jesus turns the world upside down. People who are rich, successful, beautiful, may go through life relying on their natural skills. But for the poor, the oppressed, the anguished, they have to look for someone else. They want someone else to give meaning and purpose to their life. And then the third and last reason I'm going to give for the importance of the Beatitudes is that they reveal and show to us that what's good in heaven is not just good someday in the future. It's good for us now. It's the stark truth to recognize that if you would have taken, this is a generalization, I don't usually like to give generalizations, but if you were to take as a group all of the successful athletes, all of the successful entertainers, movie stars, politicians, that you're going to find a lot of trouble and grief in their lives, a lot of unhappiness, a feeling, is this all there is to life? And yet you contrast that, even as we watch on TV today, doctors and nurses who at great sacrifice to themselves, both their own health and certainly their own wealth, are helping people survive. How much more likely those people are to have found the true meaning of life. Unsung heroes in our community right now who have found that by doing something for others gives them a meaning and purpose. In losing their life, they find it. In fact, we can look time after time locally for examples of where the poor in spirit and the meek are indeed blessed. They are the kingdom of heaven. They will inherit the earth. Let me give you just a few examples that Philip Yancey gives in his book. He speaks of a person that we've spoken of earlier, Henry Nouwen. Nouwen was a professor at Harvard, spoke at Harvard, and he made the conscious decision to leave his professorship at Harvard to go to a community named Daybreak, where he took care of a young man by the name of Adam. Adam was 25 years old. He could not speak. He could not walk without help. He could not eat without help. And Henry Nouwen took it his task to take care of Adam, to help raise him. Yancey had the opportunity at one point to interview Nouwen, and he asked him this provocative question: couldn't you do more good if you would talk to the vast audiences that are available to you than by trying to help this one person? And Nouwen's response was, "You don't get it. I'm not giving up anything. It is I, not Adam, who gets the main benefit from our friendship. For in him I have found an inner peace that gives meaning and purpose to my life. I've learned to love in ways that I never knew before. I am blessed because I have an opportunity to show mercy. Blessed are the peacekeepers. In the movie Gandhi, there's a scene where Mahatma Gandhi is walking down the street in South African city with a Presbyterian minister when they're confronted by two thugs. I'll use Presbyterian instead of Methodist just to make this point. The Presbyterian minister, when they were confronted by these two thugs, said, let's run, started to run. And Mahatma Gandhi replied, but doesn't it say in the Bible, doesn't Jesus say this is when we turn the other cheek? And the Presbyterian minister said, I think he just meant that metaphorically. Mahatma Gandhi said, I'm not so sure. I think he was trying to tell us that when we show courage, when we show we react in ways other than hate or fear, it makes a change in us. And believe it or not, it sometimes makes a change in them. An example closer to home, in our lifetime, we saw the acts of Martin Luther King and his actions. When we look at it now with the advantage of hindsight, Martin Luther King, though he was disliked, maybe even despised by many of us in the South, he was disliked and despised even more by his black brethren. They were upset because he wanted to use peaceful means to achieve some kind of community spirit. He didn't want violence. And so Martin Luther King was in a unique position of having both sides dislike him. And in his letter from the Birmingham jail, he wrote these words, applicable just as much today as they were when he said them. Our goal is not to defeat the white man. The end is reconciliation. The end is the creation of a beloved community. Indeed, peacemakers will be called the sons and daughters of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then one last example. Blessed are those who mourn. Philip Yancey tells of his own life situation where he joined a group called Make Today Count. The members of this group were people who had received the news that they had less than 2 years to live. And Philip Yancey was there as a minister, as a friend to those people. And he said, an interesting thing took place in our weekly meetings. We didn't talk about politics or weather or sports. We talked about the why issues of life, basic, solid questions of life. And he said, and those wonderful people as they spoke, they then went out and helped other people in the community, people facing far less serious illnesses. There is no more effective witness than a wounded healer. Any one of you that's experienced one of life's tragedies are much more likely to be able to touch the lives of someone that's going through it now. Feeling it makes us share it easier. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. When I first read the Beatitudes, and I must say early in my Christian journey, I too felt that there were a little too much pie in the sky. Sounded good on Sunday, didn't work well for me on Monday through Friday. The older I get, the more problems I've experienced in my life, the more I've come to the realization that they are not just words in the Bible that have no meaning. They are the very essence of life. They are what distinguishes Christianity from any other way of life. And I suggest to you in closing that if we are to know Jesus, if we are to know who he is, There's no better starting point than to know the Beatitudes, to know what they mean and why he spoke those words. If we could just close with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we have an opportunity to come, to gather, to be in person, to share your word. And for those that are watching at home, we just hope that you can feel the love from here, from this church, and give us the ability, the wisdom, to be able to understand that you have given us the words of life. And all we have to do is wrap our arms around them to become the people you intended for us to be. These things we ask for your sake. Amen.